Hey everyone, welcome to the tech capital of the world, Kernersville, North Carolina. My name is Dave, CEO and founder of Coder Foundry. And Kevin, I think I figured out we are not getting sponsored by Cursor today. We're going to give away, we're not going to get funded.
I think that boat sailed with the card.
Influencer money is gone. So
the Vibe Coding Sucks card probably uses out of sponsorship from a bunch of these guys, but here we are.
But we're going to talk about vibe coding in general and what this means for the software industry. Like, what should you be doing? Like, if you're wanting to break into coding, what should you be doing? How are you going to build apps? And realistically, with this, you'll find out, like, what do I need to really know? I mean, like, can I just really vibe it out?
We talked about this last week, didn't we? So if you didn't want to hear last week, we did a demo last week, vibe coding. So that was kind of our, like, hey, what is this thing? And how do we do it? And we kind of used Cursor and we made an app, kind of, but not really.
Yeah.
We kind of, we only spent an hour on it, but we got something out of it, kind of. But we'll talk about, like, you kind of thought this through afterwards. And we're like, well, I probably need to talk about this again because, and you kind of came up with this framework with these different kind of levels of, like, usage of AI, right? Like, there's these different levels which we'll kind of talk about. So yeah, if you haven't watched that video, go back and check that one. It was interesting.
So we tried to use Cursor to build something, and our rules were simple. Like, since I don't know anything about coding, like, I had to, like, not be able to modify the coding. And so we're going to talk about these different levels of using AI. So what I want people to understand, just because I'm saying vibe coding sucks, doesn't mean that AI is going to influence how we build software in the future. I think it's here to stay.
Yeah.
There's some caveats with that.
And I think that's the thing here. We're not saying AI sucks. We're saying particularly the idea of vibe coding sucks.
Right.
In a certain context, because again, like we said last week, the context of I kind of want to use it to get some ideas and build some things and kind of like just for me, and kind of like you do kind of want to do that. It works. What it doesn't work for is building a product, building a business, publishing it, like actually using it in any kind of context other than just for fun.
Right. So, like, once you start building commercial grade systems, so you got to understand it. Coder Foundry, that's what we aspire as students to do, is go out and get a job that has a paycheck and a 401k, and that's what we're looking for. We're not looking at, like, oh, I want to how to build a Pokemon checker, which I don't even think it would do very well at that. But like, the moment you say, I want to work for United Airlines and I want to, like, code up tickets, or I want to work for Netflix, or I want to work for these, what skills do I have to do it? And if you're just not going to get hired, you're just like, I'm a Cursor expert.
Right. Right. That's not going to look good on a resume to an engineer, is it? It's
just not going to happen. It's too difficult to do. Number one, and people underestimate that. So the people talking about this are the ones that are uneducated in the field. I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm saying they're uneducated in, like, software development.
True. There's plenty of smart people building things with Cursor and vibe coding stuff. Plenty of smart people. It's just there's a line there they can't cross. It's not.
There's a ceiling here that you're going to get to, and so you run into it. Yeah. So what we're going to see, just to let you know, on Friday, the thing we built last week with vibe coding, or attempted to, I'm going to show you how to build that in Blazor on Friday. So, like, we're going to live code something in Blazor Friday. So be here Friday, and we'll be here live coding Blazor. I don't know how long I'll be here, but several hours. So that kind of stuff. So you can see kind of my thought process in putting apps together. I tried to do that with Cursor. I tried to give it everything it could be to be successful. And I know that even me writing that specification is probably out of scope for even, Larry the sales guy. Like, I think Larry the sales guy can never put together
he's not going to understand the full feature set, is he?
And know the nuances of all the things you've got to tell it to make it work. And so I've got two frameworks. Number one, where I think AI is going for as tooling, and there's three types of engineers that work on this stuff. And then there's, like, well, realistically, what do I need to know in order to use this stuff, effectively in a professional setting, not in a hobbyist section. Hey, if you don't know how to code and you just want to go build something, go for it. Just go ahead and go do it.
And when you're doing that, let's say you're just building something and it's just for fun, whatever. There's lots of things you don't have to take into account, isn't there?
No.
Who cares about security when it's just for you, right? Like who cares? When you go on the job, they're definitely going to care about that.
They always do. Just security is job one, and it's developer responsibility. And so you can't release something and go, well, that's what AI did, so it's not my fault.
Right.
It ultimately is the human's fault. So we can't project on. You can't sue the AI. You can't fire the AI. It's always going to be your fault because you copied in there. Yep. So here's the number one thing I want people to understand. Before AI was famous for 2 years ago, people on Stack Overflow relented on junior coders all the time, just always saying, you just can't copy and paste from Stack Overflow and affect it to work. And now we have this thing that's like Stack Overflow on steroids.
It's like literally.
We're saying we're going to build complete apps this way now. You would copy everything. I don't know how anything works at all, and I can just chat my way into this, And so it's kind of problematic at this point. And so the other fundamental problem is we're taking natural language and trying to turn that into a coding language that we don't know or understand. And the coding language has nuances like packages, frameworks, and how things are put together. And there's a lot of talk in here on Reddit. We're like, well, that stuff doesn't matter anymore. Well, no, React and Blazor and Angular
has to get deployed in a certain way too, doesn't it? There's a way the whole thing's a big thing. It's a big. You have everything fixed together. You have to understand it.
Yeah, and the first time at Reddit, someone says, "Well, that doesn't matter." I'm like, okay, we can't talk to you anymore about this topic because you don't have enough knowledge to understand. Well, we got to build it with something. I mean,
right.
And
we know that's actually a problem in the testing that we've done and the messing that we've done with AI tools and Cursor and those things. And just AI in general, it very rarely sticks to a particular technology. It jumps around all over the place. Let's say that you're just even something as simple as laying out a page, right? You can tell it to use Bootstrap, but sometimes it'll try and use Tailwind, or it'll try and just use plain CSS, and it'll mix them up, and it'll just it doesn't do a particular technology stack very well. It just tries to solve the problem based on what it's learned online. Yeah. Right?
The other thing too is people are prompting this with saying don't even know that CSS is a thing. I guarantee there's a lot of 100% CTOs or I would say director of sales at technical companies. You could say, what does CSS stand for? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Very famously, I was in a meeting one time talking to someone at a Fortune 100 company and just talking to him about stuff like this. And so we need to work on the API layer. And he raised his hand. He's technical leader, senior leader. He's like, what's an API? What are you talking about? I was blown away. Are you testing me? Is this a joke? I mean,
I have the job already, right?
Yeah. Application program interface, okay. So just knowing those, that's why I know that there's a lack of education. A lot of people can be really smart about certain things and not educate on other things. I'm not a car mechanic, I'm not even a bike mechanic. I can tell you the thing I was on my little chat thing the other day. I changed the wheels of my bike for the first time without a bike shop. And then I chatted in. I said, hey guys, I'm an official bike mechanic now. I've changed my wheels. And the other guy was like, you just changed the wheels. I know I'm being facetious, man. Sarcasm, But there's people saying I can do that, I've got an Allen wrench. I'm a bike mechanic now. So that's not true, So I think that there's a lot of things that people need to understand before if they want to do this professionally. But let's talk about what is it?
Well, hold on. Let's go to one thing first. Hold on, one thing first. Yeah. Back to last week when we talked about Leo. Remember this? We talked about this
Leo.
Guy that was
Leo's super famous now.
Leo, the guy that built he built a SaaS on Cursor, which was great. He put his post up on the 15th, and then on the 17th he got under attack because we talked about it doesn't do security very well. It doesn't take into account security at all, actually. And even if you tell it to, it still doesn't do a very good job of it. Well, he eventually there is a follow up to that. He shut down his app. He shut down his app a couple of days later. He's actually rebuilding it. He says he's rebuilding it using Bubble, so no code tools.
Which is funny. He blames Cursor for the entire thing. It's Cursor's fault.
Yeah.
Curse you, Cursor. That's what he's saying. Yeah.
This line here is exactly what we ran into. Cursor just keeps breaking other parts of the code. This is the problem with it. It does good at the first shot, at whatever you ask it to do.
Yeah.
As soon as you ask it to do something else, it might fix that thing, but it breaks 5 other things. And it doesn't understand the context of those other things and how they work with that one thing you're trying to fix. And then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, you broke that now. And it tries to fix the secondary thing that it broke, and then it breaks the initial thing again. And it's this vicious cycle. Like I say, when I tried to do my Cursor app version of the thing we did last week, I got stuck in this loop where I could not make it stop displaying the Machu Picchu picture in a GeoGuessr app. No matter what I told it to do, it would never get past that. I had to start the whole thing over again to get it to reprompt again to start with the base thing, and I could never get it to add the feature set that I wanted to get to. Maybe that's me. I don't know. But I think I'm fairly smart. I'm smart enough to be able to build it. Yeah, it just kept running in circles. Every time it fixed something, it broke something else. It would fix and break. And then the one thing you try to fix, it could never fix it.
And the thing is, as the apps get more complicated, this gets worse.
This wasn't a complex app. Mine was a front-end HTML, CSS, JavaScript only app that was a GeoGuessr app. That show a picture, let me guess where it was.
I'll just feed it my code base and it'll fix all my bugs for me. I'm like, yeah, not really. Like, like in other words, like the context is only so large. They're getting bigger. But like it's only so large after you prompt it several times where things go in and out of like context and it just doesn't know. I mean, like it just doesn't know anymore. So it's trying to figure out what the best next guess is. And that's what I'm saying, that a lot of people don't understand it. It is guessing. So what do you think about this concept? People, I read a lot on Reddit this week and they were saying, well, what about the next 5 years, Bobby? Like if you're hating on it because it's only 3 years old. What happens when it's 10 years old? Is it getting way better?
It's always been that way since the invention of this thing.
It's been trained on all of GitHub already. Like what
what
else
can you feed it? How better can it get?
Yeah. I'm sure there's some edge training cases or some kind of something else that they can do to make it somewhat better. But are we going to see this leap where I can write in a simple English prompt and it generates an app? I just don't think it will. I mean, like, it's just not ever going to be there. Like, it's just not. So you're going to have to know about these systems, So one other thing we looked up too is like, coding's not the only thing that these guys say.
Oh, yeah. You sent me this link. You sent me this this New York Times link because it was funny. This was yesterday because you said, "Oh, I read this story yesterday in New York Times," and it was it's a professor and he's like, he teaches memoir writing, and because Sam Altman had come out and said, "Hey, it's great. ChatGPT is great at creative writing," and then all of a sudden a creative writer who comes out and says, "Actually, it's not." It takes an expert to say this.
And I can imagine like the comments to this article. I haven't read it all, like, because I don't pay for the New York Times. But in general, I can tell you the comments I get. Like, well, you teach this, so you're biased towards AI. Like you don't want to be replaced. Get used to it. You're getting replaced.
Right.
God's like,
yep, we've seen that.
No, I'm not getting replaced. Like I've seen what it does.
Yeah. Like I'm actually pretty confident I'm not. I think that's fine. And I think that's the same with all of these. I think when you look at these as maybe not a non-expert in a certain area, and you look at this, you're like, wow, that's actually like writing, right? I'm not an expert. I'm not a writer. I've never written a book, right? I could look at it and be like, wow, that's actually pretty good. I wrote a pretty good story. Right. Stephen King's going to look at it and be like, that sucks.
That's crap.
Because he's the expert, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It takes an expert to look at it to know what is good and bad. And it's the same thing with coding. It takes a coding expert to look at it because on face value, you go in, you vibe code something, right? And you ask it to create this app and it's like, wow, it actually created an app for me. It got past the first hurdle. Yeah, it's not good, but it creates it just like it will write a book if you ask it to. It's not going to be good,
and I'm sure that you could feed it enough content where it could spit out a book. But what I'm saying is you put that in the hands of a James Patterson, Stephen King, or somebody like that. Even if it generates something, they would massage it, they would change it. It would probably change characters, plot devices. Hey man, you forgot about the thing in Madagascar. Like we need to remember that's part of the story.
Exactly, that tchotchke in Madagascar that you built up for 3 chapters, you never came back to.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we need to figure that out. It's the same thing in movie making. When we saw Sora for the first time, we were like, whoa, people, visual effects artists are in trouble. I'm like,
yeah.
And this thing can't make She-Hulk graphics, like
Right. You try. It's right. You try and use it, and it's like, oh, okay. They're always going to show you kind of the best case scenarios. But it's getting better. But that's the same thing could be said about this. It's getting better, but it's not getting like, at least on the LLM side of things, it's not like you said. It could be. I don't know where we're going to be in 5 years. We're 3 years into this thing now, and they've said since day one, this is version 1. Wait till version 2, and then it's version 3, version 4, and it's like. Yeah, it's incrementally getting better. It does a few better things, but fundamentally, it does kind of the same thing.
That's kind of the same thing. And so I'm sure that they can make it somewhat better. But what I will say this is the expert, the knowledgeable person will be able to leverage AI better than Larry the sales guy. Larry the sales guy will never prompt to a Fortune 100 company app, like Salesforce or something like that.
Right.
It's not.
Yeah. Which leads us to let's talk about kind of the three levels of AI usage then that you've kind of thought about. What's the first one? Director. That's what you call this one.
Director. So this is the one. This is the vibe coding one. Like I call it director, but like this is the vibe coding guy, and he's basically the director of the company, the CTO, the sales guy, or whatever, and he's got an idea. And so like if I could just get this app out in the marketplace, I could win. And so like they'll take up Cursor and then they vibe code it. The reason we used Cursor the way we did was because we were playing this role. I don't understand anything about this, but I have an idea of sort of a framework that I want to do.
Right.
And even when you give it like explicit instructions, like here's what it is, and I'm sure we could have gave it more instruction and more stuff and it maybe would have done better. But even then, once it got to a certain point, it just kind of loses.
I told you though, I tried for a bunch of time and it just got stuck in a loop. It just got stuck in a loop, breaking stuff.
Yeah.
And again, I felt like that was really difficult to get out of. And I think from what I've seen other people say, that's also a common problem that people have.
Right. And I have yet to see, and this is the one thing that I've heard a lot of business leaders say about AI. I have yet to see where AI fundamentally has like displaced entire staff of something. And that could be customer service representatives, because that would be the biggest story of like, Microsoft laid off, 10,000 coders and replaced it with Copilot. That hasn't happened yet. I mean, they've laid off people, but it's not because of AI. Even with things like customer service bots and stuff like that, you expect that to be...
That'd be early. That feels like low-hanging fruit, doesn't it?
But you know why it's low-hanging fruit to us? Is because we're not working in that industry. And then you tell a professional, and it's like, whoa, they always want to talk to a human. Like, they always hit zero. They never talk to the bots. Like,
they
want to talk to, a human or whatever because they feel like they can get better service.
It's actually funny you say that. Like, this morning, my internet went out for about 15 minutes this morning. I thought, by the way, I was going to have to message you and be like, I don't think I can do this. But it went out 15 minutes. It came back. But I literally called the provider. Even though they had a chat thing online, I knew the chat thing was AI and it would never be able to help me. I just knew that the bot on their website was not going to have the answer that I want. It would not know about their system outages. It would not be able to report my problem or help me. I literally just picked up the phone. So yeah, I did the same thing. I bypassed the AI entirely, even though they have one.
And then for a while, they were talking about AI things in fast food restaurants, where you drive up and you order from the menu with numbers. And all of those failed. And I don't know why.
I guess I read somewhere recently. I think Wendy's was expanding one of them. One of them was expanding one of them. I just read that story recently, actually. I'll look it up while we're talking about this. But I did see that and recently.
Maybe they'll get that to work. But you would feel like with a discrete menu of items, a known set of like menu items, that they could do that. And like McDonald's delayed it. A lot of people delayed it just because it was wrong. I mean, like it was wrong, Then they had problems with the, multiple speakers at the same time and the AI overhearing each other and getting the orders mixed up,
Taco Bell,
getting
that's
the
what it
numbers
was.
wrong. Taco Bell's going to do it.
Taco Bell is apparently doing 500 locations for this. So we'll see. But we've already seen it at, like you said, we've already seen it at Wendy's and at McDonald's or whatever, and they've abandoned it. So I don't know if they've got a better system. But I agree with you. It felt like low-hanging fruit, didn't it? It felt like oh, of course, discrete menu, like this seems easy, and apparently it's so not easy.
It's not easy because people don't order by just off the menu, really. And if you worked in a fast food restaurant, and I've never have, but I was in the drive-through window, I'd realize like, can you just order by the numbers, bro? Like I have to do that with my wife when we're going there. We order if we're going to fast food. You order from the menu because if you don't, I'll be here for 30 years trying to explain what you want.
And it's going to be wrong. That's the other side. If you order off menu, like just take the pickle off yourself. Like that's like don't worry about it. It's gonna be just order number 7. Take the pickle off it yourself.
Go to Wendy's and like Kelly would want like one burger this size, and then she wanted the smaller fry. But if you got the combo, the fries were bigger and the drink was bigger. So we'd order all 3. So we're like, come on, man, like just order off the one. Like just don't customize it because they don't know what to do. And this is a human over there, that's seen it all. Like
that's
okay,
great.
You don't want the medium fry? Why?
Look
I don't want the
at
combo.
Look at this, by the way. Ridge Ray said Comcast Xfinity chatbot knows about outages and let you know before. That's awesome. I wish mine had that. Mine definitely does not have that. Mine my internet provider's not
Comcast.
Not the biggest. I know. This is amazing. This is the first compliment I've ever heard. Yes, but I love that. That's what it should be used for, though. That's when it should be good. Yeah. You know, because I'm jaded, I guess. I'm already just like, nah, it's not going to have that information. But if it was good and it was consistent, I would use it. But there's one other thing, by the way, too, which is a great question here from Mike. I love this question. It says, can you use the vibe coding AI to get you to a starting point on creating a particular app?
If that's what you want to do, yeah. You know,
I would throw caution at that, though.
I would. So, like, I'm going to take you through Friday if you want. I know this is like, hey, I'm coming Friday, you know, pitching the thing, you know, shameless plug. But I'm going to walk you through the process of building this app. Like, what do I do? What do I really go through from piece of paper to where I have an idea? What do I do? And how do I get that out? And for me, it starts with a wireframe, whether that wireframe be on paper, whiteboard, you know, whatever. I don't use Figma, but even if I was doing something probably larger, I'd probably use Figma. When I had our website redone, we had a Figma app that was sent to us, and that's how we looked at it, and that's how we brainstormed it, and it works really well. So, but you have to start somewhere, I think, and I think that if you start with a wireframe, that's better. Can you get there with AI? Maybe. I mean, you know, so are you going to throw the code away after that point? Are you ready for a pseudo working app? Are you going to use the code it generates? If the answer is no, then what are we doing? Like,
I think that's the problem. I think you can't control it enough to be able to understand it enough to be able to then go back and actually edit it. I think the best way to kind of use Cursor or use one of these kind of AI vibe tools or whatever you want to call them is you're either all in or you just start from scratch yourself. Because if you just start with what it produces and then try and work with it, you'll start looking at it and be like, why did it do that? You'll have no context about why it did something. And and then you try and change it and it breaks because it's got 3 dependencies on things that you don't even need. And it like, you don't understand its architecture or its pattern that it's created. You just might as well start from scratch.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
That's what I think. So, but that's how you want to use your workflow. People have different workflows than mine. I mean, like, you know, whatever your workflow works. And maybe that helps you generate ideas, you know, or there's, you know,
that's what it's
good for. A lot of programmers aren't very good at UI design, which I don't think, for me, I'm better than average, maybe, I guess, you know, like, you know, I feel like I'm pretty decent at it. I'm not saying I'm the best in the world, but I never get a good result out of the front end design from, I just seemingly it struggles all the time trying to do it, you know. Anything other than just like super basic templating. I think that's because of the training data that's there.
Right.
Other UIs are just more complicated to do. So,
yep. Okay, so you want to talk about the next one, the next level? We've called this the technical architect manager.
Yeah, I think this is where the prompts get more technical. Like, so like you may give it a spec sheet to begin with. You may spend more time breaking down the individual parts of the system. And then you're still prompting it to do all of the coding, but your prompts become way more technical.
You've got to understand some of the jargon, right? You've got to know exactly what to ask for. This is the person that does understand CSS and what it is. And they understand the framework, asking for the framework.
What framework I want it built in, you know, like my architecture that I want it put together. And I think that's the number one thing that people lack knowledge of is how is the app going to be architected? What patterns do you want me to give you your code in? You know, so that could be like an MVC pattern, be a simple one. You know, here at Foundry we build Blazor, we have one that we've invented called BDAP, which is kind of a repository pattern plus dependency injection and those kind of things that you want them to do. And so you'd have to give it samples of that and say, here's the pattern that I want to put together, and that I need samples for that. And now use this when I'm talking about my code. And then you need to like do it feature by feature. And then you try to assemble it that way. Even then, at this level, I think it's really hard to do something really complex. Very difficult. Like, you know, and I was laughing at Reddit because like all these people saying Reddit, hey, I coded something in like 3 weeks and I got this fully functional whatever, and it's a game, and everyone says send me the link, and it's always crickets from these guys. Like it's never the real thing.
Yeah, you're right. The claims are always out there, aren't they? But then it's like there's never anything to back it up. And the people that do back it up, like the guy on like Leo on X ends up like launching his thing and he's like, here we go, here's my app, and then it just gets attacked. So and he ends up taking it down.
Yeah, and that's, so I think this, you know, then the other thing too that I've read a lot of times is like commit often to GitHub or whatever, and like, but But there's a lot of people that don't even know what GitHub is or what version control is and like what is a commit.
I mean, if you're in that first director level, you definitely don't know. In this level, you probably do. Whether you can actually prompt your way into getting it to do that, I don't
know. Maybe
I don't know.
I mean, so it could give you a command and say run this command in your
right. You're still gonna have to go sign up for a GitHub profile and do all that. It's not gonna. It's not an agent. It can't do all that for you. Maybe at some point it will. Who knows?
Maybe there'll be an agent inside of like that stuff that'll do it. And so maybe the integration inside of Cursor with Git. I didn't try that. You can integrate Cursor, but you can integrate Git inside of VS Code. But still, you're responsible for issuing the commit command.
Right. You still have to understand
the full command and that kind of stuff. So like it's not going to understand. It doesn't do it automatically for you. Right. So nor should it. You want to label your stuff.
Let's talk about this question. Ganindro says, do you think there will be a problem later on with devs using AI and creating apps in such a short period of time? Basically, junior devs creating complex applications with the black box method. I don't know about down the line. I think the effect is immediate.
Do you think there'll be problems with the app? Is that what he's asking?
I guess so. Yeah, problems later on. Well, there's problems instantly. Like this doesn't.
There's gonna be problems.
Yeah. I don't think. Here's my opinion. I don't think right now there is anybody in a paid position that is vibe coding anything. There are no director level people making apps right now. No company is paying somebody to make an app for this because I don't think it's possible to make an app, you being just the director person.
Any type of
anything.
Yeah. So like we're talking about a professional level app that does something, has a function that does something.
Yeah, that gets
we're not talking about tic-tac-toe. It can make you a tic-tac-toe game. But like we're talking about a professional level app that you need to do something that you want to sell to somebody and that you want them to sign up for it, or you're going to roll it internally in the organization. It's going to track, the inventory of, the warehouse, like it's just, can you get partially there? Yeah, you can, but can you get all the way there? No. Remember I had a programmer on staff here that pushed in some, I'll just remember a RabbitMQ code into something. And he pushed it in, he committed it and rolled it out, put it in production. And the software immediately broke. And I can remember this guy telling me, he says, well, I didn't break it. I'm like, well, yeah, you pushed it in. I'm just trying to say, can we roll it back? Can we fix it? And he says, I don't know. I just got that from Stack Overflow. I'm like, well, did you test it before? Did you push it? No, I just put it in there and rolled it right out. I fired him the next day. It's like, we can't have that, man. And that seems harsh, but like, he didn't know how to roll it back. I mean, like, well, okay. So we had, at this point, probably had, 800 or 900 customers on this, 25,000 current users. The whole thing is down, like
it's a problem.
It's, I got, it's like as a consulting company, it's a big deal, so you just can't do that, like it's like, wow. Okay. And so we're using AI now as a Stack Overflow on steroids. And we're like, we'll just copy it and we'll take whatever it says. Like, I don't know what it's doing. It looks right. I mean, yeah, sure. Commit, push, roll out. We're good. And we can't operate that way. Software is too complex for that. So like if you look at something like I sent you another article today, Next.js, which is Next.js is probably the most prominent server-side framework for Next apps. And they rolled something out that has a critical flaw in it, and it's a problem, and it's a big problem. I'm not laughing at these guys. What I wanted to point to you is like, this is how difficult this crap is to do. Like at this level, when we get to this level, you can't vibe your way into Next.js. Like, it's just not possible. Like there's too many things that you got to know about. And this involves like bypassing the middleware. So like authentication and authorization just doesn't happen in certain cases. And you pass a header through an HTTP thing and it's like, oh yeah, just don't check it. And so then your server method runs and it thinks you're logged in or it thinks you have a claim, and like, that's a big deal. Like, and so if you don't understand that, even what I'm talking about right now, like what a claim is, what authorization is, you need to be educated on these kind of systems so that you could at least have a chance at the second level to prompt it out, but like, even then it's really hard. Like it's really difficult to get these things done at this level, So I'm not saying you shouldn't use Next.js, but just, just to show you it's really difficult.
Update it. There is apparently a security update for it. So if you do, make sure you're using the latest version of it.
Well, you have to use the latest version for sure. And then they're talking about where you check it. You can't just rely on the middleware necessarily to do it. You got to check it, which you should. But like, that's just, right. I don't know everything about the bug, but
So here's an interesting point. But those steps are still can guide you to understand more without having people to mentor you. Yeah, and that's yes
We're
and
gonna talk
no.
about that later, like how I use it, and absolutely 100%. Like I think AI is here to stay. Like,
right.
It is going to be essential tool that every developer will use in the future. What I'm telling you is, it's never going to replace the developer ever.
Yeah, I think it's great for learning stuff. I really do. I think, like, I use mine.
Explain this code to me,
exactly.
And it can explain it
so
to
I
you.
literally, like, from me, and on a non-coding side, one of the only buttons I have on my screen on my phone is the chat to ChatGPT, because I'll see something and I'll be like, oh, and I'll push the button and I'll be like, hey, what do you know about this? And it'll explain it to me, and it's great for learning stuff like that. It's so good at that kind of thing. It really is. And same with coding, you can learn stuff from it. You can learn from its output, which is what I said last week was what vibe coding is good for is those personal things where you just want to kind of like investigate something. And then you can see like, oh, how did it do that? Like, oh, that's cool. I never thought about that. Or that feature, like, I never thought about that. Now I'll go and I can take that and I can actually code it.
Right. And I don't know how I'm going to do Friday. I might use ChatGPT some Friday just to show you kind of like how you could use it in a scenario. I don't use it much like this, but like you could use it in a scenario where it generates something for it, because that takes me to the level 3. So, but to answer your question is, yes, you can use it to learn. That's what you should use it to learn. If you see some code in your code base and you're trying to fix a bug, you can put that function, that method in there and say, explain this to me. It's because I don't understand it, and then you could also say something like, hey, you know what, they said that this is a problem. What do you think? And then it could give you some ideas around like kind of some stuff.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's go to your third level then.
Engineers is kind of like where I think this is going to end up in. So the engineer level. So where is your, you can think of how I use coding today. So first level of coding is Copilot, and I'm using Copilot. You can use Claude or whatever, but it's built into the ID and it's giving you a really great code completion intelligence prompt right there in the window. And Copilot is pretty good at that. I would say it's pretty good. Sometimes it's flat out amazing and sometimes it's not so good.
Right. But it's good enough for you to pay for, right? So
yeah, it's good enough to pay for it for sure. Like, so it makes you type really a lot quicker. We have a coder here, Jacob, you've seen him on here a lot. He says, when I'm not teaching and I'm coding, he said each line of code, I'm like 3 key clicks, because he's like,
right.
Whatever.
He's just taking the
tab,
prompts.
dot, whatever, tab, and then it brings down the line. And what he's doing is reading what I call the ghost text really quickly and then saying whether I want that or not. Yeah. That's step 1. Step 2 in this is like, you have a smaller piece that you want to generate some code for. Maybe it's a boilerplate. Maybe you don't know the exact algorithm, or maybe you know exactly what you want to do, but you don't know exactly how to syntax it. You can stick that in a chat window. I use ChatGPT for that, believe it or not. I like it better than the Copilot chat window.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's the user error, but I feel like over there, away from the editor, I got more space and I feel like I can read it better. So that's just my workflow. So I'm paying for both ChatGPT and Copilot. And then sometimes I'll look at it and I'm like, yeah, okay, let me pull that in and I'll modify that. I think that's the second level where, for example, one thing that I think I did this week, a type ahead window. I went and said, hey, I want a type ahead control and put it in Blazor. And it gave me a short snippet of code. Okay.
Yep.
Well, type aheads also have like a display element, it didn't have that right at all, but like, the API import was wrong. So but it was like
it's always wrong.
% there. I put it in there and then modified it. And I think that's better than struggling all day trying to figure out like, how do I do this? Okay, let me think through this. So it's going to make you quicker at doing things, but you've still got to be the integrator.
Yeah, I think the point is that you read and understand every line that it creates. That's the difference between the engineer and the director. The director allows it to create the stuff, but doesn't read or understand any of the code. The engineer reads and understands everything. Yeah,
that's it. And so you're responsible for the code base. The architecture, how it's put together. How things work in together. You can look at the changes that it makes, or you're controlling what changes it puts in, and you're not just saying, like some of those when we prompt in, hey, fix this. And Cursor, it made 874 changes. Like, what did it just change? Like,
yeah, exactly. You're like, we just wanted you to change one little thing.
I just wanted you to change the color to black.
And that comes back to my problem before, where you fix one thing and it breaks 5 others. Again, because it doesn't understand the context of those things. It thinks it's fixing it, but doesn't understand the errors it's made on the 5 other things. And then you go and try and fix those and it creates 5 other errors. And that loop is so difficult to get out of when you're just in director mode, just asking it to fix the things.
So I think the engineer mode is where this is going to be for the foreseeable future. When I say foreseeable future, 10 to 15 years, unless something happens, some invention happens that we don't see yet. That's not an LLM that can produce code better. This is what you're going to be doing. You're going to use something like Copilot, and maybe it gets a little bit better completion. Maybe you can feed it. Maybe the context windows get larger, those kind of things. But like, you're going to direct every code change in. So maybe you will type less, but you need to be able to read whatever that code is generating and make sure that that works. Because ultimately, it's it's your job. I mean, that's your job to do. So like, I don't think that's ever going to be farmed out to some mindless bot. Now, can somebody write bots to help them do things? Sure. A lot of people say, well, it could generate boilerplate code like nobody's business. I wrote this all the time. It's like, I can get a back end, pass it some models, and it can write boilerplate code. I'm like, yeah, we've been doing that for 15 years without AI. Like,
right.
That's already built into a lot of the IDEs. Maybe it's better now, but like, you're still changing that boilerplate code to begin with. Even with some really sophisticated ones like inside of Visual Studio, it's still changing those things. We wrote some templating stuff for Bootstrap, where you have these little 3-word keywords that generate templates. Just so you don't have to write a head tag and a body tag and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And put it together really quickly, but then you're modifying it from there. This is where I think it's going to go. Right. So I guess the next step is like, well, how do I use AI effectively? If it's going to stay here, what do I do? And I have 3 kind of like levels for that too.
Oh, well then, what's the, hold on, before we do that, hold on. Couple of comments.
Questions,
here.
Okay.
Troy says, doesn't any AI platform collect all the data you enter into it to enhance the tool? Therefore, what business will give it access to their database data to create an app? Well, it does.
I would say this is yes and no. You can make private LLMs. You can host these privately. You can do whatever.
And I think this was the initial like pushback a couple of years back, wasn't it? They were like, because we said the same thing. We're like, what company? You imagine Chase Bank letting all their employees use this and just handing over all their information to OpenAI? It's never going to happen. But private LLMs have been kind of the answer to that, where they're trained just on their data and that never leaves their warehouse.
And
I
even
think that
with
kind of problem has been
things
solved.
like Azure, you can do this up in Azure. Like you can have your own Copilot, so to speak.
I think the providers understand that is an issue, but it's still, and I think some of the tools you can opt out, right? You see, like my data doesn't train it. Now whether that's true or not, I don't know. But there's also
what I would say counter to that is your database is already hosted up on Azure anyway. The entire database of all your customers are already up in some cloud environment anyway that Microsoft can technically go look at and download and modify. I mean, but they're not. That's just the agreement when you use a vendor.
Right. And then this comment I thought was funny too. Ridgeray says, "Does it work? I don't know. Okay, let's roll it out."
Exactly.
Zillow purchasing bot activated.
Exactly.
Those of you that don't know about the Zillow purchasing bot, I've never seen that. Please go read up on the Zillow purchasing bot. This is the bot that they let go to buy a bunch of houses, and they programmed it.
Bought a bunch of houses,
and it bought a bunch of houses. It bought too many houses. It bought every house it could buy.
Yeah, it didn't matter the price. It had no idea if it's a good idea or not.
It basically ruined the market. It's craziness. Please go read that.
This was sailor is out there spending all the money.
This was a couple of years ago. So yeah, please go read that story. It's a good one. Definitely a good one. Okay, let's. One more thing here. Brent just sent this too. It says, was in the drive-thru years ago at Captain D's restaurant. See, there was your first mistake, Brent.
Yeah.
You're in Captain D's restaurant drive-thru. The person in front of me asked, "Do you have any hamburgers?" I was going to be there a while. No way I'll get it right. This is true. Can you imagine going to like a Burger King and trying to order a Big Mac? It would be like, it wouldn't know what to do, would it? I don't think it would handle that very well. Or maybe it would.
Say it's not on the menu. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe it would. Yeah, maybe it would. It'd be like, I think you're at the wrong store. I think you need to go.
No, here's what I do believe will happen is people are going to troll this Taco Bell menu. They are absolutely going to troll
100%.
it. And they're going to publish all the TikToks about it. And they're going to
just like they did with the original ones, with the Wendy's one. Yeah, we saw those. What was the original troll? I can't remember, but they were trolling that somehow. I can't remember what they were doing with it. Because it was ordering 10,000 chicken McNuggets.
Exactly.
That's what it was. Yeah. It was like 10,000 chicken nuggets something. Because it didn't understand, and it was like, okay. The store manager comes on, and is like, we don't have 10,000 chicken nuggets.
We can't make 10,000 nuggets.
It's great. It's funny. Okay, so what are your 3 things then? What's the I don't know.
Number one, I think here to use AI effectively, the number one thing you need to know is understand systems and like techniques. So like, you need to understand like architectures and systems and how are things put together. And this is the basics of what we here at Coder Foundry try to do, is like teach people like, this is a website, this is a server, this is the client. When we talk about client-side code, what does that mean? When we talk about server-side code, what does that mean? How do these things communicate over HTTP? Now, do you need to know everything about HTTP to get a job? No, but you need to know like what a form post is, like those kind of things. Like, how does that form get up to the server and how does that work? Because all of the architecture of all the systems and all the frameworks are built on these common things that you need to understand for you to be able to prompt it adequately. So like I'm saying, we're going to be in the engineer mode here. So we need to understand kind of like what this works. And then you learn like the different systems, the techniques out there that like, okay, I need this to work in this way, it behaves this way. I do think if you're going to be a one-man shop, that you need to be an expert in UI and UX, like at least at some level. Like, where should the button go? Well, like, is it left? Is it right? How many buttons should be on the page? Is that 20? Should I put an American flag on the button? No.
The answer is always no.
So always no. It's always no. So, but like, you need to understand, like, when you see it generate something, you can look at it and you go, that's kind of janky. And so like, or that's hard to use. And so a lot of times we see in junior level developers, it's like, they don't look at the output for some reason. Right. Like, they're just oblivious to it. They're like, yeah, I don't know, man, just whatever. UI doesn't concern me. Well, if you're going to be an engineer at this level, it needs to concern you to some degree, because eventually you'll hand it a specification document or a Figma document or something, and you got to reproduce that at some level. And if you can't, you need to go back to them and tell them why. This ain't gonna work here. This is why. And like, it needs to be, you need to understand that at some level. So if you don't have any level of it, you're never going to be able to use AI tools effectively. You're going to be back at that stage one where you're just taking whatever it gives you. You're basically copying and pasting code from that thing, hoping it works, and hope's never a plan. So like, it's like you have a plan of what you're going to do. I think you need to understand project structure and architecture. So like, those are the things. The other thing, the number 2 one, is like MVC, like architecture, like how is this going to be put together, my folders and everything. So you need to tell it what the structure is going to be, so that when it generates code and it's not that, you can either move it around or change it. Naming conventions, you need to make sure you know how like things should be named, and classes and those kind of things. Like, follow these conventions that work, because that's how it works. So if you don't have that kind of stuff put in place, then your code base becomes kind of all over the place. Like,
it becomes it's unmanageable, isn't it? It's unusable. It's unfixable when something breaks or a new feature needs to be added. You just have no idea about how to do that because the code base is such a mess. It's spaghetti code, right? And
here's what no one wants to hear. If you're going to be a website developer, you need to know how to build websites without an AI tool. The AI tool is going to help you get there faster, maybe. It can help you learn, but you need to know HTML. You need to know what goes in a head tag. How do I link up a style sheet? How do I add a script tag to a page? And why would I add the script tag to the bottom of the page or the top of the page? Because you need to understand like how that kind of works. And because all of these websites, at the end of the day, whether it's React, Angular, Blazor, whatever, they all function on the same method. It's still an HTML, CSS page. It's a JavaScript that's running, something like that. Then on top of all that, if we're going to go be a professional developer, I still believe that people's understanding of junior level developers, why they say junior don't get hired, is because they don't know what a junior level developer needs to do.
Right.
And I think the skills are up here and not down here. And you need to understand HTML, CSS, JavaScript, some kind of entity framework, ORM, Dapper, SQL language, so you can query the database, probably object relational mapping and SQL. And then you need to understand something server-side language. I think right now, even if I was building a React app today, I'm not using Next. I'm using Web API or some kind of Java backend. Even companies like Netflix, I was watching a Netflix thing, kind of their developer conference. Their entire thing, the whole backend is built in Java. It's not in JavaScript, it's in Java. And so I think that you should learn 2 server-side languages that you can learn, C# or Java. Front end, it's going to be still like JavaScript. Blazor is something in the middle that's kind of different than that. But I think modern web development is kind of where it's at. And probably people think, well, what about PHP? Yeah, there's some of that front end too. I'd say that could be a front end language. You can still have a back end and some kind of C# or whatever at the professional level. Could you build everything in WordPress? Yes. But United Airlines is not using WordPress. I mean, like,
right. Right.
Lowe's Hardware is not using WordPress for their core systems, maybe for some website, but like we're not. So like, I think those are the things that you need to know. And so that way, when you get a completion back, you have a chance to discern whether that's good or bad, or like, should I take it or not take it? And that only comes with experience. And so you still need to, for the foreseeable future, learn to code at this point if you're going to participate in this industry.
And actually, one of your comments there reminded me, by the way, of did you see the message earlier that Kelly mentioned about somebody that gone to a recruiter? So one of our former students who I'm guessing is mid-level. This is not his first gig. This is probably his second or third gig. They basically pushed back, and the recruiter said, "Hey, we're going to have him do like an exercise. He cannot use AI to do this exercise." They were very explicit. You cannot use ChatGPT. You cannot use Cursor, Copilot, nothing. No AI tools. So companies already understand, like, they want somebody, we know that right now, they want somebody who can actually code, not somebody who can use AI to code.
And I think the pushback, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to use it on the job. Why can't I use it in there? Because the coding sample is probably pretty simple. And they're like, can you just do the simple stuff? Like, we're not asking
exactly.
You to,
they're just testing whether you understand it.
From memory. We're just saying, can you do the simple stuff?
That message was literally this morning, by the way. This is not an example I cooked up from. This was at 11 o'clock this morning. This is an hour before we came on here.
So they're going to use some kind of online platform. I don't know what they're using, like HackerRank or something like that. And they'll give you a code test, an online editor. Those things are monitored. They monitor cut and paste and things that are coming in.
So if you're pasting in code from ChatGPT, they're going to know.
But if you paste the whole thing, it can say, they're looking to see if you typed it in or whatever.
Yeah.
Could you put ChatGPT on another monitor and just copy and type it in? Sure. But like
we're not advocating for that.
No, but like, I mean, there's always, so like, I think it's kind of silly, but like at the same time, I understand where they're coming from.
It's the reasoning behind it is what I'm getting at. The reason is they want somebody who can code.
A completion, like, because sometimes the completion's wrong. Can you figure the problem out? Can you solve the problem? Can you help us fix these problems? Because it's harder than that. I mean, there's more to it. And so like, I think you need 5 things that you need to know still today and learn how to code if you want to participate. Now, what a lot of people say on Reddit is, they don't do punch cards anymore. I see this all the time. They don't do punch cards anymore. They're writing code. I'm like, yeah, granted, there's been some invention, like
unless you work at a bank, maybe they are still doing punch cards. I mean, they're still in COBOL. They're not far off it.
Yeah, I mean, we built a language so that it would run faster than punch cards. But like, whatever, like, so it's not like there won't be any inventions ever, and like what we have today will stay exactly the same. But what people don't understand, you're signing up for a lifetime of learning and of how this evolves. But here's what I firmly believe to my dying breath, like for the next, if you're sitting here and you're 30 years old, you have a 15-year window to make this happen. And if you do the math in there, you're going to be 45 to 50 years old before this thing has a possibility of replacing you. Right. You might as well go for it. You might as well go for it because you're going to transition into something else probably before then anyway. You'll be a programmer and then you're a project manager, then maybe you're a CTO and you don't have to code anymore. But you don't get to that C-level seat if you don't start somewhere where you're doing it. You're not going to get there today and say, well, I'm not going to do it because this tool is going to replace me. I mean, Sam Altman, Anthropic, and all these guys are saying they're going to replace every worker. Like, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not happening, man. Like, I don't know if you saw the Anthropic guy said that in the next 12 months, 100% of all code will be written by.
Yeah, he said 12 months, 100% of code.
12 months.
But we've seen this already. They've made these claims. People never come back to them to fact check them in the future. It's the new way of doing things. It's the new business model. Is just make outlandish claims and never get checked on them.
What a 12-month claim is, I need my stock price to go up today. It's kind of down in the market. So
exactly. Yeah, right.
That's what that claim's from.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. He's like, I need the short-term boost. I'm not in the long game here.
Quarter number to look good. So,
exactly. I need to buy the Lambo.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll figure it out later. And so you understand that while people will accuse me, well, Bob, you're selling a course. Of course, you're going to say learn to code. But at the same time, Sam Altman is selling you an AI. Of course, he's going to say it's going to replace everything. It's somewhere in the middle, guys. Like, in other words, like, it's somewhere obviously in the middle where we're going to say, like, yeah, you're going to need to learn how to code in order to make AI useful for you.
Right.
You know, you can try the director level and be a prompt engineer, but like, I just don't think that's going to lead to employment or gainful employment. And I want people to be employed and get a paycheck. And I think this is what we teach. And so, and I think for the foreseeable future, it's going to be that way. It's not going to be that way in 3 months. And he was saying 3 months, 90% would be written, in 12 months, 100%. So like,
we need to set one of those reminders to come back.
Anthropic is going to fire everybody next month. You know, right.
Know, like, imagine all the devs at Anthropic are just like, really? We're out? We're done?
Well, I'm leaked in right now.
Yeah, I don't see it.
That's where I think it's going to be. I think vibe coding as a profession is it's dead. Yeah, it never really happened. I think it's a term that a lot of people are out there telling you about. It's good on YouTube. It's kind of funny. It's kind of fun. And there's some really good vibe coders out there that are making stuff. But,
I've kind of seen an influx too of the kind of like, I don't know what to call them, grifter guys. Yeah, grifter guys jumping on it too, that are like the make money quick people guys. It's like, you know, it's like how to become a vibe coder in 60 days or whatever it is. And it's like how to make a 6-figure app in 3 weeks or something. And it's like, yeah, I know how to make $1 million. It's to sell me the course that tells me how to make $1 million. You've done it 1 million times. You did it with Web3, you did it with crypto. You're now just onto vibe coding. It's the next grift. It's just the next thing. And I've seen lots of videos pop up that are like that. The people who aren't coders that are getting into it. And it's like they make these outlandish claims about things. And it's like, but it's not true. You've got to look at the reality. Look at what Leo did. I believe Leo was a developer and he couldn't get it to work. Or at least knows enough. Maybe he's not on the engineer level. I think he's on the middle level though. I think Leo on Twitter that we talked about earlier is on that middle level. He's on the technical architect manager level. He knows enough about technology to be able to prompt it enough, but he doesn't know enough about how to fix it, like on a line by line level, right? Yeah. So he understands more about.
He knows enough about.
But he couldn't get it to work.
Architecture, like how he puts his stuff together.
Yeah, exactly. He couldn't get it to
tell
work.
It not to impact these systems. I'm going to lock this down. I'm good here.
Right.
He doesn't know about interfaces or like kind of like, I want an interface for this module, whatever it is, and here's the methods, here's the variables I need this to be passed into for it to work. And so like there's a lot of things like that, not to mention just basic security, like, you know, he didn't know how to do an auth.
Right. And I've seen a bunch of like people who have an AI background. Yeah, I've seen people who have an AI background who are interested in AI and LLMs and these kind of things jumping into this vibe coding thing. And I'm like, that's the person I don't trust exactly. Like, I don't trust what they're actually putting out. I don't trust that it's real. We saw it with a bunch of stuff before with these guys. They'll just tell you what you want to hear, but it's not the actual.
I could make a vibe coding channel and we could vibe something every Friday. And I just think it's more valuable to say, well, let's just do it for real. Like, you know, like why mess around with the tools, you know?
Oh, here you go. I think this is actually a good take. I think this is it. It's a hype train that will soon be forgotten. As it is already. I think that's right. I think that's exactly right.
It's another word. It's another Web3 that never really materialized. I'm not saying that crypto, you know, but like,
well, Web3 is still a thing, right? But it's not the thing that they promised.
App is going to be on the blockchain, and I was like, well, why would you do that?
We said this from the beginning. Like, why would you put that on the blockchain? It makes no sense. Exactly. You know, like, it's dumb.
Why would I have a variable transaction cost? You know, like I don't know what Ethereum costs today, but if I make one transaction, could be 10 cents, could be $200. Well, you can't build a SaaS on that, you know, to do a transaction.
But it has usage. It still is a thing. Web3 is the thing. You just don't hear about it because it's a niche thing. Because it works in certain areas that it's good at. We're not putting Foundry.com on Web3. We're not putting it on the blockchain.
I mean, we were talking about smart contracts forever. Like, every contract you make is going to be put on the blockchain, and it can be, you know, locked in stone. I mean, like, okay, so no, that's not happening. Legals aren't going to do that. Legal contracts. I mean, we have version tracking already. Why do we need it in the blockchain?
Right.
Why do I have to put it on Ethereum to do that? Like, so those are the kind of things that when you look at it, like it's not going to happen because you know how these things are put together and you're like, yeah, that's not happening, man. Like, and I honestly went into Cursor trying to expect it to be better than it was. I was expecting it to be better and I came out of it like, yeah, it's got a lot to do.
There you go. Here's a great comment. You remember, you remember Danny?
Danny, I know Danny. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. This is Foundry graduate dev, went in 2022, right before AI took off. Learning how to code has been life-changing, challenging but rewarding. That's awesome. Yeah. Thanks.
Danny's done great. He's also a really awesome designer. So like, you know. So.
Oh, there you go. That helps. That's helpful. I can see his logo there, his little DS. I can tell he's thought about that.
Definitely good. See how it's wrapped under the D.
I do. I see it. Yeah. Attention to detail there. I noticed. I did notice. That's legit. No, that's cool. That's very cool. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that'll kind of the term will come and go, right? I don't think it's a thing that's here to stay. But AI is.
Copilot's going to be here. I mean, they're investing billions and billions of dollars. The thing too that we need to understand about AI in general, as we go to general purpose workloads, there's going to come a time where, okay, I could do this in AI, but it's going to cost me $1 billion to do it. Like, like, you know, we don't know what those, right now it's like, let's run to it and let's see what happens. But eventually, you know, there's the bean counters come in and go, yeah, you know, Taco Bell, you know, it's costing us $200,000 a year per store to run that AI thing. Could we just hire a teenager to do it?
Right. You know? We just go back to the minimum wage person we were paying before, who actually people liked talking to.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like I think that's where you're going to come around to. Like some of these things just aren't feasible, and everyone says, "Well, it'll get cheaper." Will it though? I mean, they're standing up nuclear reactors, so like.
No, it doesn't. I don't think it has been getting cheaper. That's been one of the arguments, right, for a long time. It's like it gets cheaper. Yeah, the lower inferior model has gotten cheaper, but they keep bringing out a new model at a higher price. So it's not getting cheaper.
I just still think they're still selling at a loss. So that's what people don't understand. They're just trying to.
Well, we know they are. We saw that ChatGPT, whatever it was, pro business thing. It was like $2,000 a month. That's 24 grand a year, and even then they said that's still losing for those users that are using it all.
Right.
So we know it costs more. It's a loss lead at this point. We know they're just pouring money into it to like dominate a market so they can charge us more. That's 100% that's happening. No question.
People will step back and go, I don't know. I mean,
right, when it becomes exactly when we're paying cost for it, are we really going to be like, oh yeah, that's worth it? It's kind of like Netflix, right? Netflix has a price point, doesn't it? Where it's like, I'm just cutting Netflix. Like, it's good.
And you're getting close to me there. Like, it keeps going up. It's like, dude.
And I use that because
I all of DirecTV in a second. Like, you know, like I could go back to DirecTV at a discount. You know, but like Netflix.
Same thing will happen here. Same thing will happen here with AI. It's like, is it good enough for me to spend $50 a month on it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it's going to be more than that. I think it's going to be hundreds.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a point where they're going to keep incrementally putting up, and then they'll see a drop off of usage, and that's going to be kind of their sweet spot. But then it's like, how do they then make money? Because there's no way people are spending $2,000 a month on this. It's just not going to happen.
Not when you're going to have to like augment the prompts anyway.
Right. It's not going to happen.
And so like, you know, like that's what a CEO will come in and go, so we're paying this much for AI. Is it completing everything? No, we're about 60% there. So I still have the same stats. Yes. We're a little bit quicker what we're doing, but like, you know, still need the same level of staffing. You're like, okay, so we've just added another expense on top of this.
And this doesn't take into account training costs. This isn't like, this isn't the headlines that you see. Yeah, this isn't the headline that you see where it's like, it cost $1 billion to train GPT-5 or whatever. No, this is just usage. This is CPU, GPU usage.
Yeah, the inference. And so like, you know, still you need to stand up a million of these servers out there to make it work. And so, like, you know, they're building complete data centers. You know, you can see this announced from
nuclear-powered data centers.
Nuclear power, you know, just everything in like multiple states, you know, and there's companies popping up that are just building AI data centers. And so, like, eventually, and maybe we've already seen it, you know, like, you know, stock market has went down. You can say whatever you want. But I do believe part of it, especially in NVIDIA, is like, okay, so is there an end to this runway? You know, and you notice when his last thing he came out, he says, you know, what's really cool was robotics. That's
yeah.
So, okay. So next month will be, you know, everyone's gonna have a robot, you know, a $30,000 robot in their house.
It's iRobot time. Yeah, some of those, I remember like the initial price of some of those robots were six figures. They were 100,000 plus.
It's a car.
It's like,
I mean, like, or more, you know, like, you know, more than, depends on what car you own.
It's more than your average car. I mean, sure.
So can you imagine us going and say, you know what I need is a really good used robot? Is there any beater models out there? You know, I can get?
Would you buy it? This is a whole other conversation. I would never, ever, ever, ever buy a used robot. You never know where that thing's been.
It's been damaged. It has psychological problems. You know, my last owner yelled at me all the time.
Yeah, the used robot market. I don't know. That's a minefield.
Yeah. What happened to your last owner? I don't know. you know, a stick.
Have you seen the movie iRobot?
Areas,
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
He disappeared.
Yeah.
That's why I'm on the market. So.
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome. Okay, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, keep coding, guys. Good luck, and I'll see you on Friday if you want to join us. I'll live code some Blazor stuff. We're going to be talking about Blazor, and then our Blazor course is coming soon. Kevin's editing it now.
Oh, so it is super close. I don't want to like super tease it, but it is like I've got to just finish up one couple of other things. But we're super close. So weeks at this point, I would say. And we'll do that. We'll do that announcement. So yeah, it's looking really good.
Yeah. So super long.
I'm excited
and super,
to get it out there.
Super excited about it.
It's ridiculous long. I have not yet tallied up the number of hours that are in it, but I know it's a lot.
A lot.
I'm guessing it's more than... So this is our new kind of flagship course, by the way, too. This is our replacement for the Complete Coding Bootcamp that's on learn.coder-foundry. This is the newer version of that. So it has everything that has in it, but it's updated for today. And I'm pretty sure it's more video. I think... Just having, again, not having tallied it up, but I'm pretty sure it's hundreds of hours. I don't know how many hundreds. The other one was like 300 something, I think.
Yeah.
Was the other one was? It's up there. It's up there. Again, I haven't tallied it up, but it's a lot, and I need to.
Plus, what we're gonna say is it's written and video too. So a lot more written content that goes along with each video, code samples and each thing that's written. So it'll help you follow the video, and then if you miss something, you can get a code snippet right out of the learning prep folder there. Yeah. So like the course structure is going to be superior to what we've released before, so it's been an effort. It's been an undertaking, like
it's more up to date. It's a better course. It's going to be cool. And we got some kind of we got a cool surprise with it. So we'll talk about that one.
We'll talk about it soon. So we're excited about it.
So come back on Friday to do live coding. Bobby's going to be here for a few hours doing live coding. Swing by and
see you noon Friday. See you
later.